All right. It's great to see everyone again. It's Dustin from We Are One Team. I am joined by my good friend Melisa Hayes in Ohio, a big Michigan fan actually, near the Columbus area. So she's kind of in the minority there. So again, Melisa, thank you for coming on. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I enjoy doing this is talking with teachers from all sorts of different disciplines. And you're an elementary teacher, and my mom's a retired elementary teacher. She taught for 31 years. And so what is your background? How did you become interested in wanting to be a teacher?
Well, it's kind of like the old cliche. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a teacher. I don't think there's ever been one teacher that's really gave me that, oh my gosh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. But I do find through my experiences that I wanted to change education a little bit, make sure my family gets up and moves around and is more like a family. When I grew up, it was more teacher directed. You sat in your seats, there were rows. I don't think there was much collaboration until maybe middle school, but even then it was still very much isolated, and teacher was the power, held all the power, and we just kind of did what the teacher said. And I definitely wanted to change that.
Fantastic. So what are ways you have changed that? Because I completely agree with you. I remember when I was in school, I had a lot of older teachers who have since retired. And so it was really until middle school and junior high where we were able to kind of get up and move around. We sat in rows, the teacher led the discussion, and they set the tone, and that's just kind of how it was. And so what are ways that you have tried to change that sort of interaction?
Well, I have to admit, if I'm going to be real about this, because I've taught for 23 years, and that's really long, but I would say my first 10 years has been more of a teacher of compliance. I did what I was told, and after maybe the 9th or 10th year, my eyes started to open, and I realized how important it was for my kids to have a choice, my kids to have a voice. It's their education. I already graduated from 2nd grade. I don't need that much input. I just need to give them the tools to succeed. And there's always two questions that run through my mind when I prepare lessons or when I teach. And the number one thing is, if I was a student, would I want to come in my classroom voluntarily? And 2, am I having fun while learning? So those two things I want to instill in my own family. I want them to wake up and be so excited to come to school and have no idea what the day holds. I don't want them to come and say, oh, we got to get out our workbooks and turn to page 23 and listen to a video. And, I want them to know that school is so much fun, yet you're learning at the same time. You might not even realize it. And grow those relationships. I think that's the biggest, most important thing in school, especially now, is our kids know that we love them and we care about them, and they can do anything they set their mind to, and throw away any disability the child may have, because it doesn't define them. They're more than that, and focus solely on their ability and teaching the child where they are. So I try to throw in the classroom transformations. I know we even did one remotely, which was interesting. But breakouts and Skypes all around the world, and connecting with others and sharing their stories. And it's just, there's so much more about school that I think some people realize, that it's changed so much, and it's so amazing to be a teacher now, despite the COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's just so many tools out there, and so many teachers out there that want to expand their horizons. They want to collaborate. They want to have their students interact and bring that choice. And so you mentioned around years 9 and 10, you made a change. What led you to make that change? Because that's a big change, going from doing things one way and then essentially overhauling things. What was it? Professional development? Was it a group of students? What was it that led you to make that change?
I think it was a combination of, at that point in time, it was just being more reflected and seeing my kids. Back then I used to do a behavior chart, behavior, because that's what you were taught back then when I was in college, was your behavior management is the most important tool. And these kids need to know who's boss, and you need to set the standards the first day. What a load of crap. Sorry, but I mean, it's what you're taught. It's ingrained. And back then, that was the early 90s, when I graduated high school and started college. So, I mean, we've completely shifted from that point. I don't have a behavior chart. I think I burn it. I don't have a lot of papers. I let my kids choose music when they come in the room. We have a playlist, and those are all the songs, except for maybe one or two that I like, that they come into. We have dance parties once a week. I mean, it's a big family. And having a daughter with Down syndrome, I think for her and for any child, even if they don't have a disability, it's about the family. It's them being included. It's them belonging. It's them knowing that they belong with that family despite going to a resource room or speech therapy or whatnot. I think that is by far the most important thing. So I want to instill that. And that was probably doing it first, yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that word family, which is so important. And because your class is a family. And I always tell my students, even though I teach high school, we see you more than your own family during the school year. We see you learn how to drive and do all these sorts of things. We coach you on the athletic field. We see you so much. And that's what it is. Each class is that one big family, and some are a little bit different. Every class is different in some way. And so I love how you mentioned that word. So if somebody is walking into your classroom, what kind of things are they seeing? You mentioned the dance party. You mentioned how your kids get to pick out the tunes. What does Miss Hayes' classroom look like?
Oh my, it's energetic. It's loud. And some teachers who are very organized, we're kind of organized chaos, I guess you can say. We move constantly. They're never sitting for a long period of time, especially ones who have to move. Like I said, I definitely want to teach to the whole child, but there's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of ahas. There are failures. I mean, I teach my kids that in order to succeed, you have to fail. And Mrs. Hayes fails all the time. I make mistakes all the time. I constantly apologize for things that I've done. They need to know we're human too. So you would hear and see that as you walk by. Hopefully you'll see a lot of smiles, a lot of hugs. Our family is pretty close. And the learning is constant and fun. So you never know what you're going to get when you walk by, but I do have to say our door is always open. We've had people come from Twitter, which I love, who stop by, and we Skype with so many people that they're pretty much in our room anyways, even though it's virtual. So we love our distant families to stop by and visit too. And it's open to our families whenever they want to come, community. It's just one big family. And my kids use that term all year long. And even when they leave me and are in college, I had a student who graduated college and texted me and said, how much he missed our family and whatnot. So the term sticks. So
Absolutely. And you're having an impact when those kids come back, just for no rhyme or reason, just to say hi and just to see how you're doing and that sort of thing. So that's so awesome. And you're really doing an amazing thing when that's happening. So when you have a group of students, you also have their parents as well. And sometimes parents are going to be a little bit apprehensive on how you conduct your classroom. They may be more used to, their students sitting in a seat, doing book work, things like that. So how do you build those relationships to those parents that may be a little on the fence of how you conduct your classroom?
Well, the first thing, even before school starts, I'm a big Flipgrid lover. So, and I've used it for so many years, but even before school starts, I send a card to the parents, particularly the child, and it's kind of a welcome letter, but it's a QR code that goes to our Flipgrid. So if they scan the QR, it's me, a recording of me welcoming them into our family and asking them to introduce themselves, like introduce and say their name, introduce me to their family, their mom, their dad, grandma, grandpa, whomever their guardian may be, pets if they want to show them off. And then I always ask what kind of learner they are and what are their interests and what is something they're anxious about. And parents really love that because they really connect on even before the first day. And then before the first day, I send an email to the parents asking them to record on a Flipgrid a message for their child, wishing them a happy first day of school. So, and then I show those on the first day of school. And then just from there, talking to the parents, asking them what kind of a learner, how can I help them? Because I'm a firm believer that I can only do so much. I am not their parent, but I do promise to love their child like they are my own. But I do want their input because this is their baby and they need to know that he or she is in the best hands possible. So if that means they're in a desk, then I'll get a desk. If that means the child needs a fidget, I'm going to get a fidget because they're the parent and they know what's best. I'm just helping guide them along educationally and giving them as much love as possible.
Absolutely. And just the fact that you are reaching out and you're so concerned with how they are doing as a person and how their parents are doing, that is so important. And I tell teachers, for the most part, yeah, you're going to have a couple parents that have probably not the best intentions, but for the most part, 90%, I would say 95%, just want to communicate. They want to see how their kid is doing. They want to work with you. So as long as you reach out to them, care about their child, both, as a learner and as a person, parents aren't bad. They, and I also tell teachers, when you work together with their parents, their child is going to achieve that much more. And so it's just so important to build that relationship as well. So that's a tremendous thing. So you mentioned you taught for...
I would say that too.
Go for it.
Sorry. I would just say that for those parents, I try to give grace and in the back of my mind think, how would I be in that situation? Because it is their child. And I always think they're doing this for their kid. They're not making noise. They're not being angry. It's all for their child. And that seems to put a better perspective because I know every teacher has, one or two parents that want the best for their kids and they get frustrated too. So.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So you've mentioned that you taught for a few years. How has technology...
A little bit.
Yeah. How has technology helped enhance your classroom? Because when you started, and I remember when I started, if we ever used technology, we went to the computer lab and it was just a desktop computer that we would use once
Yep.
a week, to
Yep.
now as a teacher, we're one-on-one. So in the span of 25 years, we've gone essentially a 180 in our use of technology. So how has it enhanced your instruction?
It's crazy. When I was in, well, elementary, middle school, it wasn't even, because I was born in 70 something. And it wasn't really, I mean, around much. You had the big, huge computers in high school. And then college, it was a lot of paper, pencil. I think computer was there. We went to the library. Library had more computers than anything. And like you said, computer labs, depending on your high school. My high school had a few, but I think it was where you were located. And then I substituted, and there was a little bit. And then my first job was at a Islamic and Arabic school, which was a huge experience. They didn't have any technology at all. And then I got hired with Hilliard and have been there for about 20 some years. But it's huge because we're one-to-one. The kids have total, I mean, there's a firewall protector, obviously, so they can't get into everything, but the info is at their fingertips. And it's just so ironic to see kids' interest spark over YouTube and coding. And it's just so amazing to create these projects that are geared toward technology, but you gain so much more, just like Skyping with different authors or educators or classes around the globe. You're not only just using technology, the kids are socializing, they're using social studies skills as to where they're at, they are using leadership skills to find the location. There's just so much more to technology than just playing on an app. And it's just completely, my teaching has done a completely 360. It's crazy. I'm on Voxer, I'm on Twitter, trying to learn and grow as much as possible. And I guess the biggest thing is I look at my class and I want to, because they're so much like a sponge, they want so much of what's going on that's new, that I'm trying to learn so much and then pass it on to them. And I think, you know, I hear teachers say, well, you don't want to just get a bunch of apps and throw it at them. And I agree with that. But my philosophy is I have 25 individual students, not a class of 25. So I want to give them all of these different apps so they can find what's best for them, because their abilities are so different. Whereas if I just use one app and give it to all of them, it's kind of a disservice. So that's why I try to learn as much as I can and have them explore so they can find the best tools to teach and learn from.
Absolutely. And just how you mentioned, you know, our students are sponges. They want to know that stuff and they want to have that choice, that agency. And so like me, I'm a really good visual learner. I can look at something and I can figure it out really quickly. And some students learn completely different. And so if we can provide these different outlets, they're learning it, but just the method they do, the method that they go about it, maybe a little bit different. That's okay. They're still learning what we want them to. And so I think that's tremendous. And so since you mentioned it, you mentioned that you worked at an Islamic school when your career first started. Now, obviously, that is a very different environment, you know, culturally. What did you learn about yourself working in such a different environment?
Well, I learned a lot of flexibility. I learned to adjust and adapt. I learned patience. I learned that it doesn't matter the race, the religion, the color. A kid is a kid. And I love them as much as any kid. just, they were great. I wish I could see them again because that was such a long time ago. They've graduated college, I know, and have families probably, but it was a great experience. I met a lot of friends and parents. It's different. The education is a little different because of the culture, but in the end, it's the same. The parents wanted their child to succeed, and how can we do that? So we work together with a great
Absolutely.
group of kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's great that you're able to, I'm sure you had to really step out of your comfort zone to work in such a different type of school. And, I encourage people, if you grew up in a suburban community, go teach in the inner city. If you grew up in the inner city, go teach in a suburb. I grew up in the suburbs. I taught in a rural community, pretty remote for 3 years, and I lived up there. And so expanding yourself into different areas can make you gain different perspectives, and it can also help you grow both as a person and as a professional. So that's really really cool to see. And so you mentioned how movement is so important in your class and reaching that whole child. What skills are our students learning when we get movement going in our class?
Well, I think that when kids are able to move, they're able to focus more. Their attention is more focused on the material, and sometimes the movement is the material. The breakouts that we do, that excitement and spark to try and get the answer, to know the code, or it's what teaching is all about. To see their excitement and that smile and that laughter is priceless. It is exactly what I got into this career for. And I think it's so important because looking at the child and putting ourselves in their shoes, when we're in a staff meeting and we have to sit for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, we're irritable. We want to get up, we want to move. Kids they need that even more. And I think it's important to be empathetic and to realize that our kids need movement, our kids need brain breaks, our kids need those things. And if we need to ask them, do you need a break? Then you can do that. But I know in my classroom, they're on the go constantly anyway. So the only time we actually take a break is when we do testing, which takes forever. But I think it's important for them to move and know that it's okay to move, because sometimes they have a teacher that it's not okay. So it's a hard ball to juggle, but I think it's important for kids to know that we're on their side and we want to do what's best for them. And just getting to know them and the environment that they want to learn in, and being able to juggle all 25 kids in that learning environment, because it's all about them. When we set up our classroom, when we decorate, when we create our plans, it should be all about them. It should not be about us. And I think sometimes teachers do things because it's convenient for us, when we need to take a step back and see what's better for them, even though it might be not as comfortable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's putting that, putting that ego aside, really, and giving that power to the students. And so that's where I really see the transition going on in our schools. Is teachers are still teaching, absolutely, that'll never change, but they're also more facilitators of learning, teaching our students how to learn and give them the tools to do that. And so with COVID that came last year, I was completely blown away by the stuff you were doing with your students when it came to virtual learning. So this is a reality we will likely face this upcoming year. And so what are some things you have in store for your students to build those relationships, to build that compassion, that empathy, and learn those skills that we need to teach them?
Well, I think the two activities I mentioned before school even starts. I also want to definitely Zoom with them more than just one time a day. You know, maybe in the morning and the afternoon, depending on the schedule. I'm not really sure about our remote learning. But activities that I definitely want to do are just scavenger hunts are super fun. And I just Zoomed with my kids last week and we did a scavenger hunt and it just made my day. It was so fun. Um, but reading a book and asking them how they feel. I know we read a book. Oh, I forget what it was called. It was by, I forget, but just the literature that you can read and have a conversation with your kids, I think is huge. Having them in breakout rooms to discuss things, maybe they don't want to be on the spot, is optional too, or maybe just using the chat so they can give a text response instead of being on the spot. I guess it depends on the child and their personality. Having a lot of dance parties, we did that through Zoom last year and the kids loved it. Just having fun. Stems are so fun. Using Flipgrid, we did Mass Singer, where the kids would use an emoji and then they'd sing a song and we had to guess who they were. Older kids can use Snapchat filters, which I use, but they're too young. We did things like tongue twisters and just making sure that you have these fun activities. I mean, you're going to have the academics, and I'm trying to figure out how to take those academics and make them just as engaging as if they were in my classroom. Having classroom transformations, like we did a classroom transformation last year, and we were supposed to have March Madness, but we were remote, so I had to tweak it. So I created all the lessons around March Madness. The STEM was they had to create a basketball hoop, and then for math, they had to shoot basketball for a minute and see how many shots they could make in that minute. And then they could use a basketball hoop they had in their house, or they could take a laundry basket, roll up some socks and shoot, because I know most kids have that. Or they could take a laundry basket, or I'm sorry, a trash can, roll up some paper and shoot. They graphed that, and then they had to create a snack. So it was a recipe. So they used math skills to create a recipe. And for the audience to eat while we were watching the game, which was them. And then they had to put a price point on the snack. So I had kids through Flipgrid showing me they actually baked like a cake or cupcakes. And I mean, that's the culture that we have. They just are so excited and so fun. And giving them a chance to just talk, tell me how they feel, what's going on. I know at one point I went to every single house and decorated their doors. I missed them that much. And I think I just wanted that connection, them to know I'm here. And it was a surprise. Half of them had no idea I was even doing that. The parents were great, kind of held them off so I could go to each house, which took a couple hours because they were a little spread out. But going the extra mile for my fam is just, I mean, it's rewarding. It's amazing. So I think that just connecting with them, it doesn't matter the game or the activity that you do, just talking would be amazing. How was your day? How are you doing? Is huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where we're hitting that social emotional learning. You know, that's our foundation right there. We can't teach them unless we address those social emotional learnings. And you're doing that. You know, you're doing these activities where they're learning, but they're having fun doing it. And so I think that's absolutely tremendous. So you may have had this question before. You have a new teacher who may be at that point where they're stuck. They may be having trouble, whether it's engagement, procedures, and they're asking for your advice. What are some bits of advice you can give to a new teacher coming into the field?
Well, the first thing I would say is build your relationships the first day. You want your family to be close first day. And I think that's the most important thing. Behavior management is all about relationships. Throw away all your pretty clip charts, throw away all these little things. I'm not a huge Class Dojo fan, but if you use it for connecting with parents, that's great. But the whole points and stuff, it puts that child on the spot. They know that they're not getting points. They know that they had to move their clip. And then all the other kids see it too. And it just lowers the self-esteem. And then they're having that stigma, which is so yucky. So I would say build those relationships first. And that's your behavior management. Once they know that you love them, you trust them, you care about them, they will do and learn so much from you because it breaks that wall down and they can actually trust you. I would also say have fun. Like, have fun with your activities, enjoy, laugh, don't be stressed out. You make a mistake, we've all been there, we've all done it. Nobody's perfect. But enjoy your first year because it is a learning year. I was horrible my first year, and I don't know many teachers their first year that were amazing. So it's going to be a given that it's a learning year, but you might as well have fun with it. Learn with your kids, and don't be afraid for your kids to teach you a couple of things too.
Absolutely. I always tell my kids, I have a lot of answers, but I don't have every answer. So there's sometimes they ask me a question. I'm like, I don't know. And that's okay. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
And you mentioned how the behavior charts and things like that. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had a chart, and every time you had an infraction, you had to turn your card. So everyone had started off with a green card. And if, say, you were talking, it had turned to a yellow, and then it went from, purple to red. And like, if you hit red, you went to the office or whatever. And I remember whenever me or another kid had to turn their card, it was like a gasping moment in the classroom, and it kind of singled you out. So I completely agree with that. I mean, a lot of that is very punitive and almost more outdated. For teachers that do it, that doesn't make them bad teachers. I just think there's better ways to do that.
No. Yeah, absolutely not. Because I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I did it in the beginning. I'm just saying to look at it with a different lens, because even if the child who's moving their clip constantly, and you can say, oh, well, they're going to be affected, but nobody else is. Well, they are, because they are all talking about Johnny who moved their clip. So next year, when they're finding their seats or looking around the room, good, we don't have Johnny. He got in trouble all the time. Those kids talk, they know. And that poor kid I just think that they're not a bad teacher. I would just hope that they could look at it through a different lens is all, and see a different side that the other kids see. Because if we were in a staff meeting and a principal said, go move your clip, and you had to get up in front of all the teachers and do that, it would be pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, it would. And
So.
Yeah, I could imagine how that would go through at our building, and I'm sure your building as well. It would be, you'd kind of,
Look at you like a weird.
Yeah. All right. Now, throughout your teaching, you've transformed your classroom, and you've also grown as a person as well, which is extremely important. So how have you grown as a person throughout your career?
My mind is always going, and I'm super open-minded to different things. And I crave learning so much that when I see something on Twitter, I'm like, oh, I want to try that. I want to see how that works. I'd love to try that with my kids. So always learning, growing, and fun ideas, being more flexible, a lot more empathetic, especially with things going on now, knowing my white privilege and making sure that all my kids are important in the classroom. So I'm growing my library, multicultural, being more aware, listening a lot more instead of just talking. And I think sometimes we all need to do that. And I feel like I'm younger. I'm not physically younger, but just teaching, like every year, I feel like it's my first year. I'm so excited. I can't wait. And although it's going to be remote, I'm still excited to see my kiddos, even if it's through Flipgrid. I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to get to know them and their families. Yeah, I love this profession even more than I did my first year or graduating college. So.
Absolutely. And I can hear the passion in your voice, and it's incredibly infectious. And you have inspired former students that are probably educators now, other staff members, parents, educators like me that we're able to communicate on social media. So it's really, really tremendous to see. And so the last question I'm going to ask you, usually I have it up hanging behind me. It says "We are one team," and that's
Okay.
that's my moniker. That's what I'm all about. So when you see "We are one team," what does that mean to you?
We are one team means that you are selfless and you are always looking to better yourself for everybody else. You are more compassionate and you strive to do the best you can do, not just for yourself, but everyone that you impact. And it's a togetherness and a family.
Absolutely. I love it. And you live it every day, and you do it with your students, your family. It's tremendous. So Melisa, I've been wanting to get you on for a long time, and I finally were able to get you on. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and look forward to more in the future.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you.
Absolutely.